The Boxcar Children number 90, The Stuffed Bear Mystery. Created by Gertrude Chandler Warner. Chapter 1. An Unbearable Emergency. A roomy car carrying 4 children and their grandfather made its way into the mountains. As the car climbed higher and higher, the children in the car yawned and stretched. 6-year-old Benny Alden yawned twice to pop his ears. The car was so high up. The mountains must have grown while he'd been dozing. Now he was wide awake again. "Hey," he said, "what are those cotton balls on the hills?" The other Alden children, Henry, Jesse, and Violet, laughed along with their grandfather, James Alden. Jesse, who was 12, turned around from the front seat. "You'd better rub the sleep from your eyes, Benny. Those are sheep, not cotton balls. They still have on their thick winter coats. That's why they look so fat and fuzzy." "Not for long," 14-year-old Henry said, ruffling Benny's brown hair. "Peggy and Doc Furman told Grandfather our visit is just in time to help them with sheep shearing. I'd like to see that." "Know what I'd like?" 10-year-old Violet asked. "I'd like to help Peggy sew some of her Peggy bears. Didn't she say we might get to do that, Grandfather?" "I hope so." "I know so." Grandfather smiled at Violet in the rearview mirror. "When I told Peggy Furman how handy you are with a needle and thread, she couldn't wait for us to stay at Woolly Farm. She's got her hands full designing and sewing her teddy bears to sell at the Old Mills Teddy Bear Jamboree." Benny reached into his backpack. He pulled out a scruffy, sad-looking teddy bear that often went along on family trips. "I hope you don't get jealous of Peggy's new-looking bears, Mr. B," he told the stuffed brown bear. "Mr. B is certainly showing his age," Grandfather Alden said. "He's traveled on quite a few trips since I was a boy." Violet reached over to stroke the bear's droopy head. "Poor Mr. B. I think it's time to bring you to Dr. Furman's toy hospital. You need some nice wool stuffing and a new eye." Mr. B stared back at Violet with his one glass eye. Yes, it was time for a visit to the doctor's. Mr. Alden slowed down when he reached Old Mills. "Awful lot of cars today," he said. "People are already arriving for the Teddy Bear Jamboree." Mr. Alden pointed to a small wooden building next to the Old Mills General Store. "There's Doc Furman's toy hospital." "I wish we could go in right now," Violet said, disappointed to see a closed sign. "I guess someone else wants to go in too. Look, there's a woman knocking at the window as if she sees somebody inside." "Whoa!" Henry said as their car pulled up next to a yellow van. "Check out the big red bear. It's sitting in the front seat like a real person with a seatbelt on and everything." Jessie giggled. "Who could it belong to? It looks funny sitting there, as if it's waiting for its owner to come back." "Here comes that woman who was tapping on the window," Henry said. "The big bear must belong to her." As soon as the woman got behind the wheel, she blew her horn for Mr. Alden to move. Jessie rolled down the window. "Sorry, we're stuck in traffic too. I like your bear." "I have an emergency," the woman honked again. At last, the traffic cleared up and Mr. Alden pulled away. A few moments later, the woman passed the Alden's car just outside of Old Mills. "Goodness, I wonder what kind of emergency she has," Mr. Alden said. "A big red bear emergency," Henry said. "Look, there's a sign for Woolly Farm," Benny cried when the car rounded a curve in the road. "Half a mile." Half a mile later, Grandfather drove up a long dirt road. By now, the Aldens could see that the cotton balls on the hills had sooty black faces. The children rolled down their windows. "Hey, sheep!" Benny yelled out. Baa! 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 The sheep bleated back. At the end of the road stood a red house with a white porch all around. A few sheep munching on the front lawn looked up when the Aldens pulled in. Then they went right back to snacking on the grass. A cheery woman with curly silver hair came out carrying a fluffy white-haired lamb. "Hello, Aldens," the woman said when she saw the family. "I'm Peggy." She handed the lamb to Benny so she could give Mr. Alden a hug. "I'm so glad you brought the children to stay with us," she said to Grandfather. A smiling, bearded man in farmer's overalls greeted the Aldens. "Welcome to Woolly Farm. I'm Raymond Furman, but everybody calls me Doc. I take care of live animals like that lamb you're holding and stuffed animals like this fellow." He nodded at Mr. B, who was sticking out of Benny's backpack. "Mind if I take a look at him?" Benny could hardly take his eyes off the lamb in his arms. "Sure, go ahead. His name is Mr. B. Hey, you!" he crooned to the warm, fuzzy creature with the long black eyelashes. "Bah!" the lamb cried back. Grandfather looked around at all the animals scurrying about. "You seem to have more animals than people here." Nearby, a yellow cat chased a squawky but very quick rooster. "Don't worry about Rudy, our rooster," Peggy said. "Buttercup is too slow to catch him." Two friendly dogs came around to sniff the Aldens one by one. "The collie is Taff," Peggy told the Aldens. "The black mutt is Midnight," Peggy said. "We found him wandering around Woolly Farm one day and he never left." "That's how we got our dog Watch," Violet told Peggy. "He wandered in from the woods to the boxcar we lived in after our parents died. Before Grandfather found us, Watch found us." "And I'm certainly glad he did," Grandfather said. "Well, I'll take the suitcases from the car, children. After that, I'll be heading north for a couple days on business, so I'll say goodbye now." The children each gave Grandfather a goodbye hug. "Are we the only guests at Woolly Farm?" Jessie asked after Grandfather left. "Oh, we'll have a full house by the time the Teddy Bear Jamboree opens," Peggy answered. "Don't forget, you know who," Doc whispered when a woman rushed toward everyone. "Hello, Miss Sayre. Meet the Aldens. They've come for the Teddy Bear Jamboree as well." "Hi," Jessie said when she recognized the woman. "We saw you and your bear when we were stuck in traffic just a little while ago." The woman, whose red and white polka-dotted hat seemed about to blow away, paid no mind to the Aldens. "I've been searching for you all morning, Dr. Furman. You keep disappearing on me." "Well, never mind. I need you to check Chatterbear right away." The Aldens saw Peggy and Doc exchange looks as if this had happened before. Now, Miss Sayre," Peggy said. "I'm sure you'll want Doc to check Chatterbear at the toy hospital so he can be examined properly." The woman clamped down her hat, squashing the bow on top. "Well, I suppose so, but I will expect Chatterbear to be your first patient when you open the hospital in the morning." With that, Miss Sayre stomped off in her green mud boots, carrying her orange plastic tote bag. Doc smiled. "Miss Sayre is one of my regulars. She comes to the Jamboree every year with some new bear she's designed or copied from old bears. She can't quite make a go of her bear business, though. Now she's hoping to interest a toy factory in making a talking bear." Peggy sighed. "Every time we turn around, there's Miss Sayre and Chatterbear. Yesterday I found her in my studio looking at fabrics. I think her bear has more outfits than I do." Doc examined the Alden's bear. He didn't have any kind of outfit at all. "Mr. B here is quite a different fellow than Chatterbear. We'll have him on the mend soon. Bring him by in the morning, children. I have a soft spot for soft old bears like Mr. B." Standing on the hill, Peggy and the Aldens watched Miss Sayre struggle to get Chatterbear out of her van. "They're quite a pair," Peggy said. "I'm not sure Chatterbear is quite ready for the Jamboree. He has a few problems, what with his voice box and battery-powered eyes. Doc tried to tell Miss Sayre she might do better by designing a simple bear, but she won't listen. Violet hugged Mr. B. I'm glad our bear doesn't have eyes that need batteries. He's only got one eye anyway. Peggy gave the Alden's bear a gentle pat. Never you mind, Mr. B. I'm sure Doc will get you a new glass eye. We'll soon have plenty of natural sheep wool to fatten you up. Now let's go to Shepherd's Cottage. That's where you children will be staying. Don't mind the animal parade, she said when her pets followed everyone. After the children got their suitcases, Peggy brought them by the barn. This is where we shear our sheep and prepare the wool we use for my bears. Peggy noticed Miss Sayre's yellow van parked next to the barn. Oh dear. I asked Miss Sayre not to go in there without one of us. She crashes around so, scaring the sheep. Besides, I really can't have her alone with all my wool-making equipment. Benny tugged on Peggy's sleeve. Can we go in there? I promise not to scare the lambs, especially this guy. Peggy saw how gently Benny held the lamb in his arms. Of course. Not right now, though. She stuck her head in the door. Yoo-hoo, Miss Sayre! I'm locking up now. Peggy clicked the padlock. She must be somewhere else. I wish she would park in the area for the guests. Soon they came to a small red and white cottage. Oh, Violet said when Peggy let the children inside Shepherd's Cottage. It's like my room at home with flowered wallpaper. Aw, Benny said. It doesn't look like where a shepherd would live. Couldn't we sleep in the hayloft like real shepherds? Peggy chuckled. Taff and Midnight are our shepherds. If there's time, you're welcome to play in the hayloft. Just be careful climbing up. We keep the ladder outside so we can load the hay directly from the wagon, but it wouldn't be safe to sleep up there. You might roll off. Here are some real beds. Violet put Mr. B down on one of them. His head flopped onto his chest. After you drop off Mr. B at the toy hospital tomorrow, I hope you can help us with the sheep shearing, Peggy said. How does that sound? Like fun, Henry said. Work is the best fun of all. Peggy stepped onto the porch. See you in the morning, she said. Benny looked down at the lamb. Hey, what do I do with this little guy? I don't want to wake him up. Peggy pointed to a small wooden crate just inside the doorway. It was filled with clouds of fleece. Just lay him down there. He can spend the night in here. If he wakes up crying, give him this. Peggy pulled a baby bottle from her jacket pocket. Just make sure to keep him inside. It's still cold at night and he needs to stay warm. And one other thing. What? Benny asked. He needs a name, Peggy answered. Your grandfather said you were good at naming things. Benny stroked the lamb's black forehead for a minute. Smudge. I'd like to call him Smudge. Chapter 2. Bad day. Smudge was better than an alarm clock, Benny said the next morning when the children walked into Old Mills. He woke me up a bunch of times, so I gave him his bottle and he drank the whole thing. He's just like a baby. Jessie chuckled. When you were a baby, Henry and I used to give you a bottle when you woke us up. You always drank the whole thing, too. As the Aldens walked along, Miss Sayre's van went by. The children waved, but the van didn't slow down. The children could see Chatterbear's large red head staring straight ahead at the road. When the Aldens arrived at the toy hospital, a small crowd had gathered around Miss Sayre's van. Everyone wanted to see her talking bear. Step back, Miss Sayre cried, beeping her horn. Dr. Furman! Oh, Dr. Furman! When Doc came out to see what the fuss was about, the Aldens almost didn't recognize him. Instead of his faded blue farm overalls, he was wearing a crisp white doctor's coat and a stethoscope around his neck. Miss Sayre waved him toward her van. Dr. Furman, I need you to help Chatterbear right away. Do you have a stretcher to carry him in? I'm the stretcher. Doc picked up the huge red bear with both arms. What seems to be the problem? His voice, Miss Sayre told Doc. It isn't working. Doc led everyone inside. Let's put Chatter Bear up on the examining table in here. I'll see what I can do. Please step back, everyone. Here, let me remove Chatter Bear's bow, Miss Sayre said. His voice recorder is in the back of his neck, and he needs new batteries for his eyes. They've been flickering instead of flashing. Doc noticed the Aldens standing to the side with Mr. B, who wasn't flickering or flashing. You children can go visit my other workroom in back. That's where I keep my special older patients, Doc said with a smile. There's a book room back there, too, full of bear books. The Aldens didn't need much coaxing. Old bears were just the kind of bears they liked. They headed straight for the door marked Antique Bear Den. Inside, shelves and cabinets were filled with old stuffed toys. Scraps of woolly fabrics and woolly fur lay in piles around a large work table. Off to the side stood several cabinets. Bears that looked even older than Mr. B stared back at the Aldens through the glass cabinet doors. The children discovered they weren't alone. A gray-haired woman with a braid wound on top of her head knelt in front of an open cabinet. The Aldens saw her before she saw them. Jessie coughed to get the woman's attention. "Hello, we're the Aldens." The woman stood up, surprised. Her rosy cheeks turned even rosier. "What are you doing in Dr. Furman's workroom?" she asked. "He doesn't allow children in here by themselves." "Sorry if we startled you," Jessie said. "He said it was okay for us to come in here. He's busy fixing a talking bear." The woman said. "Talking bears. What will be next?" "Oh," Violet said when she noticed the woman was looking at Mr. B. "Would you like to see our bear?" The woman looked over at Mr. B. Well, yes, your bear is an old one, but not very valuable." Violet swallowed hard. "He's valuable to us. We love him. He belonged to our grandfather." The woman nodded, and her voice changed a little. "Ah, I see," she said. "If it belonged to someone in your family, I can see how it would be important to you." She shut the door to the cabinet, turned the key, and walked to the far end of the room as if she couldn't wait to get away from the children. Jessie stooped down to read a sign on the cabinet the woman had been looking at. "Herr Bears. I wonder what they are. Very old ones, I guess. There's only one of them in this cabinet right now. Let's go look at Doc's bear books, then come back," she whispered to the other children. "That woman keeps staring at us as if she wants us to leave." In the book room, the Aldens found another surprise visitor. An older man, all by himself, sat in a comfy chair by the bookcases. He seemed so lost in the book on his lap, he didn't look up when the children entered. Hello?" Violet said softly. The man's pen clattered to the floor along with a notebook. Violet bent down to pick up the man's things. "Leave them," the man said in a gruff voice. Violet stepped back. "I'm sorry," she said. "We didn't mean to disturb you. I don't like being interrupted either when I'm reading or doing my homework." The man gathered up his notebook, which was jammed with loose papers. "This isn't homework, young lady. May I ask how you got in here? Dr. Furman's library is for grown-ups." Violet looked around at the many children's books about bears. "There are lots of bear books for children," she said in her most polite voice. "Nonsense," the man said. "Well, I guess my peace and quiet has come to an end." With that, the man put on his brown wool hat and grabbed his walking stick, his notebooks, and an armful of books. He went into the bear den and began poking around. Every few minutes he glanced back at the book room as if he couldn't wait for the Aldens to leave. "I wonder if he's a bear doctor too," Henry whispered. "Not a very friendly one like Doc, though." Benny was restless. He liked books, but he liked toys even more. "Can we go back and look at the old bears now?" Jessie peeked through the door. "We better wait, Benny. Now Miss Sayer is in there with that man. The other woman must have left. I'd rather not have the two of them standing over us while we look at Doc's antique bears. Let's wait until they leave. Then we can go back." A few minutes later, Jessie checked the bear den again. "Okay, now we can look around as much as we like without anybody thinking we shouldn't. Miss Sayer is out front bothering Doc again. I wonder if he figured out how to fix her bear." "I'm Chatterbar," the Aldens overheard the bear, "and I like to talk." Miss Sayer scolded Doc. "You still didn't fix him. Now his voice is too low and too slow. Nobody will be able to understand what he's saying. That's not how he's supposed to talk." Violet hugged Mr. B. He wasn't saying a word. "Please, Miss Sayer," the children heard Doc say, "I need plenty of light and space to work on Chatterbear. Why don't you go work on your booth at the town hall and come back here later?" Miss Sayer hesitated before finally leaving Doc and Chatterbear. "Phew," Doc said to the Aldens when they came out to see him. "It's hard to work when someone stands over you." "Oh, would you like us to leave until you're done?" Jessie asked. Doc smiled. "Some interruptions I enjoy. How do you like all the antique bears in the bear den?" "I like the one called Herr Bear," Jessie said. "Whose bear is it?" "The owner, Mrs. Withers, isn't arriving for a few days. That's when the prize is given for the rarest bear in the teddy bear jamboree," said Doc. "Herr Bear is so rare that he has a good chance of winning." Henry thought about this. Maybe that's why the lady with the braid opened the cabinet to look at it. Now Doc looked worried. With the jamboree about to start, so many visitors stopped by, I lost track of who was here. This is why I always keep the Herr Bear cabinet locked. That particular Herr Bear is extremely rare. "How come?" Benny wanted to know. "Well," Doc said, "he's the boy twin of a female bear called Fräulein Bear. That means Miss Bear in German. Herr Bear means Mr. Bear. The Swiss designer made only one twin pair for his own children. The only difference between them is the color of their eyes. The girl bear has golden eyes, and the boy blue eyes. The designer made other Herr Bears, but they have black eyes, and they are smaller than the twins." "Does the owner own Fräulein Bear too?" Violet asked Doc. "It's sad when brothers and sisters get separated from each other, especially twins." "Even if they're bear twins," Benny added. "I know," Doc agreed. "Unfortunately, no one has been able to track down the girl twin. I've checked all my antique bear books, searched the internet, and asked every teddy bear collector I've met about Fräulein Bear. No luck so far." "We didn't get a good look at Herr Bear," Benny said. "The lady closed the cabinet." "Phew," Doc said, relieved to hear this. "I must have left the key in the lock by mistake when I heard Miss Sayer carrying on before. Well, no harm done. I'll get Herr Bear from the cabinet so you can get a good look at him." Everyone followed Doc into the bear den. When they came to the Herr Bear cabinet, the children stared and sighed. Doc's key was still in the lock, but there was no bear staring back. The cabinet was empty. Chapter 3. Hey, Hey. The next morning after breakfast, the Aldens dressed in their old work clothes. They had important chores to do in the barn. Peggy and Doc had asked them to help with the sheep shearing and said it was a fuzzy, messy job. "There you go," Jessie said when she helped Benny untangle his overall straps. "Now you look like a real shepherd boy. Maybe the sight of you will cheer up Doc. He's pretty upset about the missing Herr Bear." "I know how to cheer him up, Jessie," Benny said. "We'll just tell him we always find things for people, so I know we can find a bear." "Thanks," Doc said when Benny told him this. "Finding that bear would be a big relief. I'll keep searching, but I only have one set of eyes. You children have 4 sets. Plus, Mr. B has one," Benny reminded Doc. That makes 4.5 pairs of eyes. As the children made their way to the barn, a few cars arrived with even more guests. Now we're not the only ones staying here with Miss Sayre, Jessie said. There is her van next to the barn, right where Peggy doesn't want her to park it. Did you kids call me? Miss Sayre screeched when she heard her name. Dr. Furman isn't letting you in here, is he? You could scare the sheep. They have to be calm when they get sheared, you know. Jessie tried hard to be friendly. Peggy invited us to help out. Help out? Miss Sayre cried. She won't even allow me to help out. What do a bunch of kids know about sheep shearing anyway? Peggy told Grandfather she's going to teach us how, Benny said. Children shearing sheep? Miss Sayre said angrily. I've never heard of such a thing. She turned and stalked away, muttering to herself. When they entered the barn, the Aldens heard bleats and baas from the Furmans' small flock. Hey, Smudge, Benny said when he passed the lamb pen. I guess you're too little to get a haircut. Smudge came right up to the chicken wire that enclosed the pen. Bah! See you later. Benny patted Smudge's warm head. He joined his brother and sisters gathered around Doc and Peggy. Doc was carefully shearing a sheep with electric clippers. That's a good girl, Doc crooned, holding Daisy, a large ewe. He gently cradled her head with one arm as he clipped her fleece with the other. Every few seconds he stopped to stroke Daisy's neck or ears, talking to her the whole time. Daisy seemed to melt in Doc's hands while he clipped her. Any of you children want to help me with Snowflake? Doc asked when Daisy scampered off with her new short hairdo. Just hold him gently while I clip. Jessie knew what to do right away. Watch likes it when we stroke him under his chin like this. Snowflake relaxed in Jessie's arms while Doc finished the haircut. After that, Doc let each of the children take turns holding the ewes and rams during the shearing. You Aldens are very good with animals, Doc said when he finished the shearing. Look at all this fleece, Benny cried afterward. The barn floor was covered with huge puffs of fleece. You could stuff 100 bears with all this wool, even big gigantic ones like Chatterbear. Peggy laughed. We're not done yet, Benny, not even close, she said. You can help me carry all this fleece to the skirting table in the next room. Is that where you make wool skirts? Benny asked. Doc laughed. It's a special kind of table where we examine the wool. We pull out any parts that are tangled or dirty. Peggy and I need plenty of helpers to carry in all this fleece. The Aldens each took great heaps of wool in their arms. They carried them into a little room attached to the barn. The puffs were so big, the children looked like sheep themselves. Okay, toss an armful on the skirting table, Doc told Henry. I'll show you how to make sure it's smooth and clean. Peggy only uses the finest fleece to cover her bears. The other clean parts are used for stuffing. Save some stuffing for me, Benny said. He laughed. That's what I always say at Thanksgiving. Benny means save some stuffing for Mr. B, Violet explained, and some for the Hare Bear, Benny said to Doc. We're going to find him for you. Doc looked a little worried. I sure wish you would. If I don't find him soon, I'll need to contact the owner, but I'd like to avoid that if I can. After Doc left, Peggy showed the Aldens how to sort the wool. The children soon figured out which wool to set aside for spinning and which wool would make good bear stuffing. See this pile? Peggy asked. It's for Mr. B. She patted a big clean puff of fleece. We'll wash it later to get out some of the oils. After it dries, we can plump up Mr. B. Mr. B would like that, Violet said. Thank you for teaching us so much. Benny looked up at Peggy. Miss Sayre said kids shouldn't help the sheep get sheared and that she isn't even allowed to do anything. Peggy bit her lip. Oh dear. I do wish she would appreciate that Doc and I have helped her so much over the years with her bear business. but I can't let her in on all my secrets. My Peggy bears are special because we use wool from our own sheep. Not many teddy bear designers do that. Is Miss Sayre a copycat? Benny asked. Peggy laughed. Let's say more like a copy bear. She tried to copy other bears too. Now she's working on a talking bear, even though there are already talking bears available. Every year, Doc and I try to convince her to design a brand new kind of bear instead. Guess what, Peggy? Benny announced. We're going to find out who took Doc's missing hair bear. Peggy put down the wool in her hands. Really? Now, how do you plan to do that? We can keep an eye on people, Benny said. Like everybody who was in Doc's hospital yesterday and at the jamboree, we'll see if anyone's snooping around old bears too much. Peggy said. You may get a chance to do that tomorrow. I was hoping you would help me set up my Peggy Bear booth at the town hall. Have you any suspects yet? Benny looked up at Peggy. A few, but we're not telling until we catch them. Peggy sighed. I see. It would certainly put Doc's mind at rest to find that hair bear soon. This mystery has him so upset. Don't worry, Benny said. We like solving mysteries. Peggy brushed all the wool fuzz from her coveralls and jacket. Then good luck. Now, I hope you don't mind if I leave you for a while. I need to pack the station wagon for the jamboree. You've learned so quickly, I know you can finish up on your own. The Aldens worked quietly after Peggy left. They wanted to pay close attention and do a good job for Peggy and Doc. What's that creaking? Henry said a few minutes later. Hey, who just dropped hay on my head? Benny asked when he felt some hay land on his hair. He started wiggling and scratching himself. Some of it went down my neck, too. When the children looked up, they saw more strands of hay drifting down. The wind must have blown open the hayloft door, Jessie said. I'll go up and shut it, Henry said. We have to keep the barn warm for the sheep. The ladder is outside, Jessie reminded Henry. The children followed Henry out. While Jessie held the ladder, Henry climbed up and shut the hayloft door. There, he said when he came down. Now we're safe from any more unexpected flying objects. The children decided to take a short break to visit the sheep in the main part of the barn. Soon they were surrounded by the furmen's flock with their new short hairdos. They like to cuddle with us because we're warm, Jessie said as one sheep after another nudged her and the other children with their noses. They all want to be stroked and petted. Okay, guys, that's enough, Henry told the nuzzling sheep. We have to get back to work. Stop crying now. But the sheep didn't stop crying. The Aldens couldn't hear them bleating while they worked. When Jessie returned to the skirting table, something was missing. Where's that nice big clean pile of fleece Peggy left for Mr. B? It was right here. Henry checked under the table. It's getting weird in here. First the door blows open for no reason. Now some of the fleece we cleaned just disappeared. Pretty strange if you ask me. Listen, now the dogs are barking outside. Maybe they want to come in where it's warm, Violet said. The children ran out. They found Taff and Midnight growling at Miss Sayre's yellow van. Henry ran ahead and came back laughing. Guess what they're barking at? Chatterbear! Miss Sayre has him in the van, but she can't turn off his voice box. It's pretty funny. The other children ran over to the van. Chatterbear's voice wasn't low and slow now, but as chirpy and fast as a chipmunk's. I'm Chatterbear and I like to talk. Stop that barking, Miss Sayre told the Furman's dogs. Goodness, children, take those dogs away before Chatterbear gets any more upset. I went over a big bump and that made his voice box break again. The Aldens tried hard not to burst out laughing. Instead, they clapped and whistled to get the dogs away from Miss Sayre's van. Only they weren't quick enough. Midnight decided he wanted to sniff Chatterbear and leaped up to the front seat. Down! Get down! Miss Sayre screamed. Get this dog down before he hurts my bear. Jessie ran over and grabbed Midnight's collar. Come on, Midnight, let's go for a walk. Those were the magic words. Midnight backed out of the van. Jessie reached in to straighten out Chatterbear, who had tipped over sideways. There, she said after she fastened the seatbelt over him. That's when she noticed Miss Sayre's big orange tote bag. Stuffed inside was at least enough clean silky fleece to fill a few nice bears. Chapter 4. Syrup and Suspects. I smell maple syrup, a voice said from under the covers in Benny's bed. Jessie sat up and sniffed. I smell it too. It must be coming from the sugar house. Peggy said that's where they boil the sap from their maple trees to get syrup. Maybe this morning we'll get some of those delicious tasting pancakes Grandfather told us about. Bah! The Aldens heard next as they slowly awakened. Smudge looked up from the basket of fleece by Benny's bed. He wanted breakfast too. Soon, more animal sounds joined the chorus. Rudy the rooster was crowing outside. Midnight and Taff were scratching and whining at the Aldens' door. No use trying to sleep any longer, Henry said. It's a zoo around here. I guess it's time to get up. In no time, the children had dressed and tidied up Shepherd's cottage. Animals trailing, they headed toward the main house where Peggy and Doc's famous Woolly Farm breakfast was being served. Oh, look, there goes Miss Sayre with that tote bag of hers, Jessie said. Now it doesn't look all bulged out the way it did yesterday, but I still have a feeling she's the one who took the special fleece Peggy set aside. Should we ask her? Benny wanted to know. If she did take Peggy's fleece, we should tell her to bring it back. Jessie hesitated. I would, but I don't want her to know we're watching her, at least until we find the person who took Doc's hair bear. I could sit next to her at breakfast and drop a fork or something, Benny said. Then I could see if there's any fleece sticking out of her pocketbook, or maybe even the hair bear. Henry picked up Benny by both arms and gave him a whirl. Good plan, Benny. Just don't let Miss Sayre take the bacon and sausages from your plate while you're under the table. I won't, Benny said, very certain of that. The Aldens dropped off Smudge in the lamb pen, then came in the kitchen entrance of the main house. Peggy was at the stove, carefully stacking some golden pancakes onto a plate. Good morning. Need any help? Henry asked. Peggy looked up. Good morning, children. You're just in time to bring this plate to Professor Tweedy. He's the man at the corner table with the glasses. Maybe you can keep him company by sitting at his table. He said his pancakes were too dry, so I made him some more. Benny sniffed the air. These sure don't look too dry. We were going to sit next to Miss Sayre, though. Peggy looked over the children's heads. Oh, she just sat down with some other bear people here for the jamboree. Professor Tweedy is our only guest this week who isn't a teddy bear person. She bent down to whisper to the children. He's very serious, but I'm sure he would enjoy meeting 4 polite children. Jessie looked up at Peggy. Oh, we already met him at the toy hospital, she whispered back. He didn't seem to think we belonged there. Peggy put down her measuring cup. Professor Tweedy at the toy hospital? Doc didn't mention that. I'm surprised. The professor usually avoids bear people. Peggy dropped a pat of butter on the pancakes. He told me he's giving an important talk on American presidents at a nearby college. He checked in late last night, so Doc hasn't seen him here yet. There were a lot of people at the toy hospital, Jessie mentioned. That man was in the book room reading. Then we saw him looking around the bear den. I'm sure it's the same man. Peggy's eyebrows went up in surprise. Goodness, you just never know about people. When the Aldens joined Professor Tweedy in the dining room, he didn't look up from his magazine. He frowned as the children sat down. Peggy asked us to give you these, Violet said when she set his pancakes on the table. We're the Aldens. We saw you at Doc's toy hospital, remember? The professor finally peered over the glasses perched on his nose. He didn't seem too interested in the 4 pairs of eyes staring at him. Indeed. Then he went back to stirring his coffee and reading his magazine as if the children weren't even there. "We're here for the teddy bear jamboree," Violet said. "It's going to be fun. We have a bear we're going to fix up. Want to see him?" Mr. Tweedy speared a bite of pancake, ignoring Violet. "Our bear is almost as old as our grandfather," Violet said. Professor Tweedy finally tore himself away from his pancakes and his magazine when he heard this. "Well, what year was it made? Where did it come from? What kind of bear is it?" "The nice old kind," Violet said in her soft, polite voice. "The kind we cuddle when we get sick or play with when we're lonesome." The professor sniffed. "I don't mean that. I mean, where is this bear of yours from? What brand is it? Goodness, young lady, don't you know anything about your bear's history? If it's an old bear, you should be taking care of it. The bear isn't supposed to take care of you." When Benny heard this, he just had to say something. "We do take care of him. We're going to help fix him up and everything." "That's an expert's job," Professor Tweedy said. "Certainly not a job for children." Miss Sayre finally livened up the Aldens' table a few minutes later. "Hello, I'm Hazel Sayre," she said to the professor. "May I borrow the sugar bowl from this table? Are you a bear collector? I saw you at Dr. Furman's hospital. Are you a seller or a buyer?" "Neither," Professor Tweedy said. This didn't stop Miss Sayre. She was as chatty as her own talking bear when it came to bears. "What's that you're reading?" she asked, trying to get a closer look. Mr. Tweedy closed the magazine part way. A history magazine. Benny had been peeking at the professor's magazine, too. "Wow, that looks like a fun history magazine since it has all those toys in it." Professor Tweedy rolled up the magazine and stuffed it in the briefcase he carried everywhere. "It's not a child's magazine. Now, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to finish my breakfast. Talking while dining is bad for one's stomach, and I have quite a bit of reading to do." Even Miss Sayre looked hurt when she heard this. She returned to her table without the sugar bowl. The Aldens finished breakfast and didn't dare speak to Professor Tweedy again. They decided to bring their own dishes into the kitchen to save Peggy from the extra work. "Well, did you melt the professor's heart?" Peggy asked with a twinkle in her eye. "I don't think so," Jessie answered when she put her dish down. She told Peggy what the professor had said. He even scolded Violet about not taking good care of Mr. B. "Goodness, how did that come up?" Peggy asked. "When I mentioned to him that we'd seen him at the toy hospital," Violet said, "he asked a lot of questions after I said we had an old bear." Peggy looked at her watch. "Well, I'm sorry you kids didn't have such a great breakfast, but you can still have a great day. You know, if you go over to the town hall now, I think you could work on my Peggy Bear's booth. That would give me some time to wash and dry the other fleece I found for Mr. B. After all, you want him to look handsome for the best bears contest at the end of the jamboree. And maybe win, even if Mr. B doesn't know how to talk," Benny said. "Most of the best bears don't talk, at least not with voices," Peggy said. "They speak to us in their own way, just by being bears. Now here's the list of things to do when you get to the town hall. I left everything you'll need in my space there. Row 11, booth E. Give me a call if you have any questions." "I have a lot of questions," Henry said after they left Peggy. "Why would someone like Professor Tweedy, with no interest in bears, go to Doc's toy hospital? And why would he ask us all about Mr. B? Or lie about reading a magazine? I really think that magazine was about toys, not history," Jessie added. "Let's make sure to keep an eye on Professor Tweedy as well as Miss Sayre." "Mr. B can only keep one eye on them," Benny reminded everyone. "That's because he's only got one eye." Chapter 5. Bears Everywhere. When the Aldens arrived, the Old Mills Town Hall was buzzing with bear people. They carried big bears, little bears, and in-between bears. Some were unpacking bear music boxes, other bear t-shirts, bear books, and every kind of bear knick-knack. The teddy bear jamboree was nearly underway. "Let's get our badges," Jessie said. She soon found the blue badges Peggy had arranged for them ahead of time. "We belong to Peggy Bears," Betty said when a security guard stopped the Aldens at the entrance. The man winked at the older children. "You can go in, young man, but no growling." "Only my stomach growls at lunchtime," Benny said. The man laughed, then waved them in. People were swarming all over. The children looked for the row where Peggy told them she had left her things. 11E. "Oh, good," Henry said when he found the right row. "Peggy has one of the best spots. It's right near the entrance. That way everyone will see it." The shelves, lights, signs, and boxes of Peggy Bears, of course, were piled up, ready for the Alden touch. Jessie took an envelope from her backpack. Peggy put in a note saying we can fix up the booth any way we want. "Here are photographs from last year's booth. See how great it looked?" "Oh, they're so cute," Violet said when she saw pictures of fuzzy Peggy Bears lined up on shelves the year before. "I love her bears best. Most of them are the same color as the sheep, not dyed red or purple or strange colors that animals don't have. I wish we could open her bear boxes right now." "Not yet," Jessie advised. "We need to put the shelves and tables together first. Here's Doc's toolbox." Soon the Aldens were busy hammering in nails and putting up shelves for the display. A couple rows away, they heard a recording of the Teddy Bears' picnic, so they hummed along as they worked. It didn't feel like work at all. A few minutes later, loud voices nearby interrupted these happy sounds. One of the voices belonged to the woman they'd seen at Doc's. "I must switch my location immediately," the woman was saying. "I cannot have a successful booth with all these children running about." Now, Mrs. Keppel," the security guard said to the woman. "These children are good friends of Peggy Furman. She told me herself they are quite responsible. Why, just look at the job they've done on the booth already." The woman pushed back a loose strand of hair from the old-fashioned braid on her head. Staring at the guard, she didn't seem about to give in. "How will there be room for my customers with these children nearby? After all, my woodland bears are very delicate." Violet put down her hammer and went over to the woman. "Hello, I'm Violet Alden. We met at Dr. Furman's toy hospital. I love woodland bears. My Aunt Jane sends me one for every birthday. Now I have a whole collection. I haven't broken a single one. I even take them down from the shelf to dust them once a week. I think they're wonderful." Violet's voice seemed to calm down the woman. "Well then, do you wash them regularly with baby soap and dry them with soft flannel?" the woman asked. "Yes," Violet answered. "Once a month I give them a bath in warm soapy water, just like it says on your little booklets. Do you need help unpacking all your boxes? It probably takes longer to set up little China bears than Peggy Bears." The woman seemed about to say yes, then changed her mind. "No, I can't have anyone else handling my bears, especially not children." By this time, the security guard came by again. "Everything okay now, Mrs. Keppel?" "Yeah," Mrs. Keppel answered. Benny took his head out of a box of Peggy Bears. He whispered in Violet's ear. "Mrs. Keppel sounded just like Mr. Walder down the street near Grandfather's house." "I know," Violet whispered back. "I think she's from Europe, just like Mr. Walder. That's where woodland bears are made." When the Peggy Bear booth was done, other bear sellers came by to admire the Aldens' work. Soon Benny's stomach began to growl, just like he told the security man. "It must be time for lunch." Jessie checked her watch. "Almost. Oh, there's Peggy. She's taking us to lunch, remember?" Peggy lit up with smiles when she saw the way the Aldens had fixed up her booth. "You children certainly have the right touch," she said, looking around. "I never thought to put the little bears in the laps of the bigger bears. I might even sell them as a set. What a clever idea. I love it. Thanks. Henry folded the stepladder and placed it behind the display. With 4 of us working, we got a lot done. He lowered his voice and nodded toward Mrs. Keppel in the next booth. At first, that lady didn't want us here. Then she was nice after she found out Violet has a woodland bear collection. Peggy's eyes widened. Oh, how lucky that my booth is next to hers. Peggy walked over to Mrs. Keppel. Hello, I'm Peggy Furman of Peggy Bears. I'm delighted our booths are side by side. We've never had woodland bears at the Jamboree. Did you bring them all the way from Europe? Ja, Mrs. Keppel said. I mean, no. Well, I must finish my work. Farewell. Mrs. Keppel turned away. The Aldens bundled up a few boxes, dusted shelves, and swept the booth. They put up the velvet rope so no one would come inside the booth while they were gone. An announcement came over the loudspeakers. The delivery truck has just arrived. Would the following people please come to the back of the auditorium to pick up your shipments? Benson, Davis, Furman, Hudson, Keppel, Laramie, Richmond, and Sayre. Please pick up your deliveries at the back of the room. Don't you want to come with me? Peggy asked Mrs. Keppel. 9, Mrs. Keppel answered. I mean, no. After Peggy left, Mrs. Keppel looked at the Aldens. Do not touch anything here, Mrs. Keppel said. I know how children are. It is very tempting to take things that don't belong to you. Jessie felt her heart thump. We wouldn't ever do that, Mrs. Keppel. You don't have to worry. Mrs. Keppel's pale skin reddened with shame. She almost seemed to apologize to the Aldens. Instead, she turned on the heels of her old-fashioned shoes and went off to get her packages. I wish I could figure her out, Violet said. Sometimes she starts to like us, then she doesn't. Benny moved over to the furthest side of Peggy's booth, then stretched his neck over to Mrs. Keppel's booth. I don't even like China stuff. He hoped she had something he did like. Hey, come here. Look at those furry brown ears sticking out from a bag under one of the shelves. See? The other children came over for a look. They were careful not to put one finger or toe into Mrs. Keppel's booth. Good eyes, Benny, Henry said. But I can't see enough of the rest of it to tell what kind of bear that is. The furry old kind, Benny said. Chapter 6, Big Fuzzy Heads. On the way to lunch, the Aldens told Peggy about Mrs. Keppel and the furry ears. I couldn't tell if they were hair bear ears, Benny said, but you know what? They sure weren't made out of China stuff like those other bears she has. I almost asked her about the hair bear again to see if she would get nervous, Henry said. Then the newspaper photographer showed up to take pictures. That seemed to upset her. How odd, Peggy said. Do you believe she took the hair bear? Before the others could answer, Violet spoke up. We saw her put the bear back and lock the cabinet. Woodland bears are special. I don't think someone who makes them could be a thief. Benny disagreed. Who would want small china bears that you have to dust and everything? You could have a cuddly bear that doesn't need dusting. There's one way to find out, Violet said. We'll have to go back and talk to her more. I'd like to get to know Mrs. Keppel better anyway. By this time, Peggy and the Aldens had arrived in front of the town restaurant. Peggy felt for something in her pocket. Oh dear, I think I left my keys on the table in the booth. Would one of you run back and get them for me? I'll go, Henry said before sprinting off. Bring Mr. B back, Benny called out to Henry. I hid him under the table. I sure don't want him to get lost like the hair bear did. Henry made his way through the crowds. When he came to Peggy's booth, he spotted her keys right away. There they are, he said, dropping them into the pocket of his jeans. Then he bent down to reach for Mr. B. A familiar pair of green mud boots was sticking out from under the table. Miss Sayre, Henry said when he realized who was wearing the boots. What are you doing under there? What am I doing? Miss Sayre grabbed her orange tote bag. What are you doing with a blue badge? Those are only for bear sellers, not customers and children. Henry held the badge out for Miss Sayre to read. See? We're Peggy's assistants. That's how we got our badges. Did you come to help her too? Miss Sayre seemed annoyed at Henry's question. Of course not. I have my own seller's badge, as you can see. However, Peggy said I could borrow things I needed for my booth. I was looking for gift boxes. Henry looked down. Something with Peggy's name on it was sticking out of Miss Sayre's tote bag. Were you planning to tell her about taking her pattern book? A voice nearby said. It was Mrs. Keppel, and she was frowning at Miss Sayre. Miss Sayre looked away from the woman. Well, it was dark under there. How was I supposed to tell a book from a box? Miss Sayre shoved Peggy's pattern book back under the table. She quickly gathered up her things and left. Thanks, Henry told Mrs. Keppel. I'm glad she didn't take Peggy's keys, too. I'm Henry Alden. I'm Elsa. Mrs. Keppel almost smiled, but not quite. Elsa Keppel. Don't leave important things lying about. You must be careful about thieves. We try to be, Henry said. This is what I was looking for, he said when he reached under the table and found Mr. B. So long. Henry quickly glanced into Mrs. Keppel's booth. There was nothing but china bears to be seen, no furry ears at all. Henry left the hall, eager to tell Peggy and his brother and sisters about Miss Sayre and Mrs. Keppel. When he stepped outside, he saw a crowd of children and their parents. As he drew closer, he discovered what everyone was looking at, 3 furry bear characters mingling in the crowd. Henry saw Peggy on the far side of the crowd and called out to her. Hey, Peggy, Henry said. Where are my sisters and Benny? They'd sure like to see these bears, too. Peggy put her hand over her mouth to cover a grin. What's up? Henry asked when he reached her. Did they go inside already? That's when the shortest bear came up to Henry and began to giggle. Hey, I know that laugh. Henry bent down to get a closer look at the bear. That's you inside there, isn't it, Benny? He whispered at the bear's big furry head. The bear laughed again. See, I told you we could fool him. It was Benny's voice. And guess what? Henry, Jessie, and Violet are bears too. Peggy laughed, then guided the 3 bears into the restaurant. They scampered off to the restrooms to change. I hope you like a good joke, Peggy said to Henry. Every year, the people who run the jamboree have 3 children dress up as the 3 bears from Goldilocks and the 3 Bears. I hope you don't mind that I volunteered Benny and your sisters for the job. They're just the right size for the costumes. Jessie is the Papa Bear, Violet the Mama Bear. Benny is the baby bear, of course. It was his idea to fool you when you came back. You rascal, Henry said when Benny came back as a boy and not a bear. You sure had me fooled. Now here's a real bear for you, a stuffed one anyway. He handed over Mr. B. And here are your keys, Peggy. They were right where you thought you left them. Know what, Henry? Benny asked. When we have those costumes on, we can walk around and search for the hare bear. Nobody will know it's us. Good plan, Henry agreed. Now let's find a booth, a restaurant booth, that sells sandwiches, not bears. I'm hungry. What are you going to have? He asked his brothers and sisters. Honey, they all said at the same time. Miss Sayre had one of your pattern books in her tote bag, Henry told Peggy before he even looked at the menu. Mrs. Keppel told her to put it back. Peggy sighed. Oh dear, that may be my fault. This morning I told Miss Sayre that if she needed anything, she could help herself to supplies from my booth. I didn't mean my pattern book, though. I thought she would know better than that. Did she put it back? Benny asked before deciding on a grilled cheese sandwich. She sure did, Henry said. We've got enough to look for. We'll be plenty busy searching for the hare bear and the person who took it. Starting right after lunch, Jessie told Peggy, unless you have plans for us. Peggy looked up from her menu. Well, I was hoping you children could help me and Doc do some bear repairs at the toy hospital. The children wanted to be in two places at the same time. Then Jessie figured out a way they could be. I know. We need to find out more reasons someone might want to steal the hair bear. Didn't Doc say he has lots of books about collectible bears? We could get information and maybe even search on the computer at the toy hospital. Would that be okay, Peggy? Of course, Peggy said. At the same time, you could take turns helping stuff and sew up the last of my Peggy bears, along with Mr. B, of course. Hey, Benny said, look who just walked by. Professor Tweedy. Henry swiveled around to see where the professor was headed. He's 2 booths back. Then that's where I'm going, Jessie said. Our napkin dispenser is empty. I'll get some napkins from Professor Tweedy's booth and see what he's up to. He's got that big briefcase he always carries everywhere. I wonder what he's doing here. Jessie waited a few minutes, then got up. The other children pretended to eat their food. They glanced up every few seconds to see what Jessie was going to do. When she came to Professor Tweedy's booth, Jessie saw his open briefcase on the seat. She was disappointed there was no bear inside. In front of him, the professor had spread out his notebook, some papers, and a magazine open to bear photographs. He was copying something into his notebook. Oh, hi, Professor Tweedy, Jessie said, not hesitating a bit. I'd like a few napkins from that dispenser, she said before the professor had a chance to protest. The one in our booth is empty. Thanks so much. See you later. Jessie scooted back to her own booth with a fistful of napkins. Guess what? Professor Tweedy didn't have the hair bear, but he was definitely taking down notes about bears. I saw it for sure. Then for sure, we're going to find out why, Henry said before biting down on his double-decker turkey sandwich. Chapter 7. Too Many Bears. When the Aldens strolled over to the toy hospital after lunch, the closed sign was posted on the door. Don't worry, Peggy said. Doc closed early. He needs to finish all the work he has on the bears people dropped off for the jamboree. He told me he'll be in the workshop. Peggy and the children walked around the back. They were surprised to see Miss Sayre's yellow van backing out. The passenger with the familiar red furry head wasn't in the van. Oh dear, Chatterbear must be inside, Peggy said. That must mean Doc is working on him again. He fixed him as best he could. Finally, he told Miss Sayre her bear is far from ready to be presented. Peggy unlocked the back door for the Aldens. When they stepped inside, Chatterbear lay on the work table. Doc was bent over him, adjusting some buttons. Oh, thank goodness you're here, everybody. I could sure use some help. Miss Sayre said this fellow now talks when she doesn't want him to, and won't speak when she does want him to. I've spent more time on this patient than all my other ones put together. That's why we came over, Jessie said. Peggy's going to show us how to fix some of the bears. The children also want to find out more about hair bears, Peggy said. I'm letting them use our computer to get the information they're looking for. Even bear detectives use computers, Benny told Doc. Chatterbear continued to stare at the ceiling. For once, he had nothing to say. Doc had taken out all his batteries. I found it too strange having his eyes blink at me while I worked on his voice box, Doc explained. Oh, one more problem. You know that pile of old bear collector magazines we were going to try to sell Peggy? Now some of those are gone too. Lots of things are walking out of the toy hospital, Peggy said, not just bears. I'm almost afraid to ask, but did you children have any luck tracking down Hair Bear? Doc asked. His owner gets here tomorrow afternoon. I don't even want to think about telling her he disappeared. I could try tracking down another one, but it won't be the same. Benny touched Chatterbear's red nylon ears. We saw some brown furry ears sticking out of Mrs. Keppel's bag, only we couldn't tell if they were Hair Bear's ears. Doc snapped some batteries into Chatterbear's voice box. Is Mrs. Keppel that lady who was here the morning you children arrived, with the gray hair and a braid? I never had a chance to help her with her bear. Now I wonder what she wanted." "What bear?" Jessie asked. "She had a bear in a blue bag, if I remember correctly," Doc said. "I thought she left after that, but I guess she waited for me in the bear den." "That's when we saw her," Henry said. "I wonder if the bear she brought you was the one Benny saw in her booth." Doc was done. He pressed a button and Chatterbear began to speak. "I'm Chatterbar, and I like to talk." The children covered their ears until Doc turned off the bear. "Can I put the eye batteries in?" Benny asked Doc. Doc smiled. "Sure. Then you can help me look for a glass eye for Mr. B. How's that sound?" "Like a good idea," Benny said. Now it's Mr. B's turn to see the doctor. After he got Chatterbear's eyes flashing again, he went off with Doc. Peggy brought the other children back into the office where the computer was. She clicked the computer mouse a few times. "Here's a list of our favorite places on the internet for finding information about stuffed bears." "Thanks," Jessie said. "We're going to look up Professor Tweedy's name and Mrs. Keppel's and Miss Sayers, too. Maybe we can find some clues about them." Peggy laughed and clicked on another list. "The professor has probably written a few articles about the presidents for his college. If you type in his name on any of these places, perhaps you can learn more about him. I don't know about the other two people, though. They're not well known, except to us, of course." "Thanks, Peggy," Jessie said. "After I finish with the computer, I'll come back and help you with your bears." After watching Jessie work for a few minutes, Henry and Violet decided to go back to the workroom. They found Doc and Benny sifting through small drawers of glass eyes. "Here's one that's just right," Benny cried when he found a golden glass eye for Mr. B. "A perfect match," Doc said. "Let's set it aside. After you kids make a new covering for him, we can attach this new eye and his old one." Peggy showed the 3 interested children how to slip off Mr. B's old wool coat. Then she helped them take it apart to use as a pattern to cut pieces for a new wool covering. "He looks so sad and pale now, lying there in his thin lining with no nose or eyes or mouth," Violet said a few minutes later. "He looks like a ghost bear," Henry said as he carefully traced a pattern on some stiff paper from the outline of Mr. B's old wool cover. "Here, Violet, why don't you cut the pieces now? You have steady hands." For the next hour, the 2 older children cut and trimmed and stitched a new woolly cover for Mr. B. "While you 2 are stitching, I'm going to have Benny stuff Mr. B," Peggy said. "I did manage to find some grade A fleece. Goodness knows what happened to the fleece we sheared in the barn." The children worked quietly, stuffing, sewing, threading, and snipping. They only stopped when they heard Jessie call them into the office. "Come here," she cried. "You won't believe what I found out about Professor Tweedy." Henry sat down next to Jessie and began to read the computer screen. "Skip to the last paragraph in this article about him," Jessie said. "The rest is about some kind of special history project he's working on." Henry read the last paragraph aloud. "Professor Tweedy's hobbies include bird watching, stamp collecting, and rare book collecting. For this article, his wife reported that he has also become an expert on antique bears. When asked about this unusual hobby for a professor of historical research on presidents, all Professor Tweedy would say is, 'Indeed.'" "Wow," Benny said. "Now he sounds like someone who might want Hair Bear." Jessie handed Henry a few sheets of paper that she had printed out. Maybe not. Here's an article about hair bears that I found on the computer when I looked up antique bears. And guess the name of the daughter of the man who designed the Hair Bear twins. Just guess." The other children could hardly stand it. "Is it Miss Sayers' first name?" Benny asked. "Hazel?" Violet guessed. Jessie shook her head from side to side. "9, she said. That means no in German. The designer's daughter's name is Elsa. That's Mrs. Keppel's first name. Peggy looked over Henry's shoulder to read the sheet of paper. Elsa Bern. Maybe Bern was Mrs. Keppel's name before she got married, Henry said. The article says another child's name was Kurt Bern, but he died about 30 years ago. Jessie sank back in her chair. I couldn't find anything about Elsa Keppel or Hazel Sayre, but I learned a lot about Herr Bears. Some of it is sad. Herr Bears were the most popular bears in Europe a long time ago. They stopped being made after the factory burned down. It did? Violet said. How awful. Yes, Jessie went on. That made Fritz Bern, the designer, lose his business. I even found an article from an old newspaper about the fire and how the Berns had to sell their house and almost everything they owned. Violet was curious about this sad end to the Herr Bears. Did you find out anything about the twin bears, Jessie? That's the saddest part, Jessie said. In the article about the fire, it mentioned that some of the family's things were stolen around the time the Berns moved away, but no one was ever caught. Apparently, the twin bears either disappeared or were stolen. You mean Doc's Herr Bear could have been stolen before? Benny asked. Looks like it, Jessie said. The twin Herr Bears were valuable even back then. Fritz Bern used pictures of them in his advertisements and everything. The bears were famous. That's so sad, Violet said. If Mrs. Keppel is related to Fritz Bern, maybe the Herr Bear is hers. I wonder how we can find out. The Aldens grew quiet now. Stories about children separated from their homes always made them think about when they left their own home after their mother and father died. Violet went back to the workroom. She brought something for Jessie. Look, she told her sister, this will cheer you up. Mr. B! Jessie broke into a huge smile. You have a new covering, or you almost have a new cover anyway. Plus, you look as if you've been eating too many blueberries. You're nice and chubby now. Grandfather isn't going to recognize you. You're almost as good as new. Just as the other children began to explain how they had fixed Mr. B, they heard a loud thud in the book room. Everyone ran over at once. Professor Tweedy, Peggy said. What are you doing up there? Please come down. Professor Tweedy was tottering on a step stool and looking very confused. Above him stood a bookcase with a half-empty shelf on the floor. On the floor lay a pile of books. A large picture book rested on top of the heap. The title said, Antique Bears. Chapter 8. Bears on Parade. Benny clicked the seatbelt over his furry stomach. Now Chatterbear isn't the only bear wearing a seatbelt, he announced to everyone in Peggy's car. Are you sure Miss Sayre and Professor Tweedy didn't see us in our costumes? Peggy couldn't help smiling at the sight of the two furry heads in the rearview mirror and the one next to her in the front seat. I'm sure, Benny, she answered, starting the car. Miss Sayre left early without even eating any breakfast. She wanted to get the best position in the teddy bear parade. What about Professor Tweedy? Violet asked from inside her mama bear costume. If we see him, we don't want him to know it's us. I'm not sure where the professor went, Peggy said, but he left an hour ago. Don't worry about being in costume. It's our secret. I'll drop you off just outside town so no one sees that we're together. Oh, here comes Henry on Doc's old bike. Benny rolled down the window with one paw to talk to Henry. Make sure Mr. B waves to people watching the parade. I will. Henry settled Mr. B into a basket on the handlebars. Mr. B and I will both wave. Since you guys are in costume, make sure to look for me if you see anything suspicious going on, okay? We will, the three bears said before Peggy pulled away. A few minutes later, Peggy dropped the children off a couple blocks from the Old Mills Town Hall. Minutes after that, Henry rolled by on the bike. He squeezed the squawky bike horn. The three bears waved back but didn't say anything. They didn't want anyone to know that they had a human brother. Old Mills looked like a bear town, not a people town. There seemed to be more bear marchers lined in the parade than parade watchers on the sidewalks. Some of the marchers showed off their bears on handmade floats or carts. Others borrowed strollers and wagons to display their favorite bears. Henry joined the bike marchers. While he waited for the parade to start, he kept an eye on his brother and sisters in their bear costumes. They were surrounded by children who wanted to have their pictures taken with the three bears. Soon, a television crew from a news station came by. Jessie, Violet, and Benny were going to be on television. Of course, no one would know who they were, but Henry knew they wouldn't mind. With crowds surrounding them, the younger Aldens didn't see Mrs. Keppel slip away from the crowd. She stopped to speak to someone standing beside her cart of woodland bears. After quickly looking around, she stepped inside the town hall. Henry couldn't believe it. Didn't she know the parade was about to start? He had no choice. He tied up his bike and grabbed Mr. B. At the edge of the crowd, he waved his arms at Jessie. Jessie knew right away that Henry needed her. She whispered to Violet and went off to see what Henry wanted. "What's the matter, Henry?" Jessie whispered from under her Papa Bear head. She kept on nodding to the crowds while she waited for Henry's answer. Henry handed her a piece of paper and a pencil. "Could you autograph this for my little brother?" he said. "He likes the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears." When Jessie looked down, she saw that Henry had written a message to her. Mrs. Keppel went into the town hall. "Let's follow her." Jessie quickly returned to Benny and Violet. "Stay here," she whispered. "Henry and I have to follow Mrs. Keppel. I'll be back in a while." Benny wanted to come, but so many children crowded around, he and Violet couldn't get away. By the time Jessie caught up with Henry, he was already in the lobby. Mrs. Keppel was about 10 feet ahead, clicking her thick heels along the marble floors. Tiptoeing behind Mrs. Keppel, Henry and Jessie tried not to sneeze or cough or bump into anything. Mrs. Keppel turned around a couple times. When she did, the children hid behind the pillars, which were just barely wide enough to hide Jessie's bare head. Mrs. Keppel entered the main hall, which was dark. Tiptoeing behind, Henry and Jessie could barely see Mrs. Keppel. Henry guessed she was headed for her booth. Taking a chance, he signaled to Jessie to scoot around in another direction. Jessie made a loop around the other aisles. She and Henry just had to get to Peggy's booth before Mrs. Keppel got to hers. "I'm glad we wore sneakers," Jessie whispered when they got to Peggy's booth ahead of Mrs. Keppel. She pulled the curtains slightly, just enough to see into Mrs. Keppel's booth. Soon they heard her footsteps. They were afraid to breathe. Mrs. Keppel turned on the small spotlight in her booth. She took out a key and opened a small wooden cabinet. She pulled out a bag, the very one Benny and Henry had seen. The ears were still sticking out of the bag. A minute later, the whole bear was sticking out. In fact, an entire hair bear was sticking out. Mrs. Keppel picked him up and hugged him. She turned off the light, then left the hall. "Violet is going to be so upset," Jessie whispered to Henry, feeling upset herself. "So the thief turned out to be Mrs. Keppel after all. I wonder if she's going to march in the parade with the hair bear." Henry thought about this as he made his way with Jessie through the dark hall. How can she do that? Doc could have her arrested for theft. Something doesn't make sense. The children squinted when they came out into the sunlight again. The teddy bear parade was underway. That's when Henry and Jessie noticed two furry marchers going the wrong way. "You won't believe what we saw," Jessie said when she and Henry joined Violet and Benny. She forgot all about pretending to be a bear. Mama Bear's head drooped when she heard what Jessie had to say. "It was Mrs. Keppel who took Hair Bear," Violet said. Her Mama Bear costume had a happy bear face, but the voice inside it sounded sad. I can't believe she was the thief. I know, Jessie said. Look, the parade just stopped, so the Oompa Band can play a song in front of the mayor. Let's catch up with Mrs. Keppel. Henry took Mr. B back to his bike while the younger children ran ahead like a trio of bears running through the woods. There's the Woodland Bears cart, Violet said when she saw the pretty painted cart a few feet ahead. The 3 bears surrounded the cart. Hello, bears, Mrs. Keppel said cheerfully. Come meet my bear. By this time, Henry had rolled up on his bike and stopped in front of Mrs. Keppel, too. We already met your bear, he said firmly, only it's not your bear. That's the hair bear that was in Doc Furman's toy hospital. Mrs. Keppel's mouth opened, but nothing came out right away. Finally, she found her voice. You know nothing about this bear. Go find Dr. Furman. I can prove that this bear belongs to me. Can he and the owner say the same about their hair bear? At that moment, a tuba sounded and the parade began to move ahead quickly. Mrs. Keppel put her bear over her shoulder and pushed her cart forward. The Aldens dropped back from the marchers. I'm really confused, Jessie said. She made it sound as if that hair bear is different than the one we saw at Doc's. Peggy and Doc should be marching by soon. There they are, Benny shouted when he saw the Furmans pushing the Woolly Farm wheelbarrow full of Peggy's fleecy bears. Tucked in back was the basket of fleece from Shepherd's cottage. Smudge is in the parade, see? Indeed, Smudge was nibbling away on a flower pot filled with brand new shoots of green grass. Here we are, Jessie called out before she and the other children stepped into the parade with the Furmans. Don't you children look wonderful, Peggy declared. We were searching all over for you. We were searching all over for your hair bear, Henry announced, and we've found him. Doc stopped in place, nearly toppling the wheelbarrow. What do you mean? Mrs. Keppel took him, Jessie said. See, up ahead? Doc squinted. Mrs. Keppel's bear flopped over her shoulder just like a baby. It's the hair bear, all right, Doc said. Let's not let them out of our sight. The parade is swinging around to the town hall again. Let's stop Mrs. Keppel and get to the bottom of this. When the teddy bear parade finally broke up, Mrs. Keppel didn't seem surprised to see the Aldens or the Furmans. Doc stepped in front of Mrs. Keppel. I need to take a look at the bear you're holding. I have reason to believe it may be the one that disappeared from my toy hospital earlier this week. The children were surprised that Mrs. Keppel didn't try to get away. In fact, she willingly turned her bear around so Doc could get a better look at it. Now it was Doc's turn to look surprised. Your bear has golden eyes, not blue. It's Fraulein Bear. Mrs. Keppel smiled, but she did not look happy. Yes, and I possess her birth certificate. Can you say the same for Hair Bear, Dr. Furman? Chapter 9, Bear Talk. The tuba stopped playing, the marchers stopped marching, but the Aldens didn't stop looking for Hair Bear. I'm sad Hair Bear is still missing, Violet said when the doors to the old Mills Town Hall opened to the public, but I'm glad Mrs. Keppel didn't take him. Jessie wasn't quite so sure. She does have the birth certificate for her Fraulein Bear, but she wouldn't tell Doc anything else. I still think she's hiding something. I just have a feeling she's connected to Hair Bear somehow. Henry was used to talking to bears now, but he wasn't used to constantly sharing his sisters and brother. Wherever they went in their 3 bears costumes, people followed them. I thought we were supposed to follow people, not the other way around, Benny said when he was alone for a minute with Henry. I like being a bear, but I like being a detective better. As the children decided what to do next, they heard a familiar voice. Ugh, I hear Chatterbear's voice in the next aisle, Jessie said. He's so loud he drowns out the teddy bear's picnic song. I suppose we ought to visit Miss Sayer's booth. I wonder whether she's having any success with her talking bear. So the 3 bears, along with their human brother, Henry, followed the sound of Chatter Bear's voice until they came to Miss Sayre's booth. "What's her bear saying anyway?" Benny asked. "It's different than before." As the children drew closer, they made out the words of Chatter Bear's new message. "Come see Sayre's all-natural cubs. Come see Sayre's all-natural cubs." Miss Sayre's booth was packed with people who had answered Chatter Bear's invitation. Henry whispered to the younger children, "Listen, I'll be in the next booth. Since Miss Sayre doesn't know who you are, one of you can ask her a lot of questions while the other 2 of you look around. Peggy said she's always copying other bears. Maybe the Hare Bear will turn up in Miss Sayre's booth." Jessie looked at Henry through the eye openings of her costume. "I'd also like to find out if she took all that nice fleece that disappeared from the Furman's barn." "Okay, bears, let's go." She took hold of Benny's paw in one hand and Violet's in the other. "Oh no," Jessie said when she finally got a good look at Miss Sayre's booth. Violet touched Jessie's arm with her paw. "What's the matter?" Jessie held out her paw. "Look, those are copies of Peggy's bears." The 3 bears stared at the many bears on the shelves. Sure enough, there was a row of stuffed bears that looked almost the same as Peggy's. "They're not as nice," Violet whispered to Jessie. "Some of the stitching is loose. They're not as plump either." Jessie was mad. So this is why she kept snooping around Doc Furman's toy hospital and woolly farm, she whispered to Benny and Violet. "I wouldn't be a bit surprised to find the Hare Bear here. Maybe she plans to copy him, too." "Oh, hello, bears," Miss Sayre cried in her own chirpy voice. "Please come visit my cubs. And my Chatter Bear, of course. I'll take your picture with him." The 3 bears posed in front of Chatter Bear. Their bear faces were smiling, but their real faces were frowning underneath. "I've never seen your bears before," Jessie said in a deep voice she hoped Miss Sayre wouldn't recognize. "Are they new?" Miss Sayre brought over one of the fleecy bears, whose stuffing wasn't quite tucked in. "Yes, they're my new line of bears, the old-fashioned kind that don't talk like my Chatter Bear here." "Would you like to hold this one? It's stuffed with real fleece from real sheep." Violet decided to learn more about Chatter Bear's new voice. "I heard your talking bear when he was in Dr. Furman's toy hospital. Didn't he say a different message a few days ago?" Miss Sayre waved off Violet's question. "Oh, I'm just using him to get attention for my new bears. Everyone wanted to see a talking bear, but parents don't seem to want to buy one for their children," she said. "I've been told children like bears they can talk to, not the other way around. Is that true?" Violet thought about Mr. B. "Yes," she said, so quietly Miss Sayre didn't hear her. Not that it mattered, since she was already trying to interest another customer in her all-natural cubs. With all the commotion going on with the 3 bears, Chatter Bear and the new bears, Henry saw his chance. He squeezed himself into the booth. Bending down, he took a close look at some of Miss Sayre's new bears on the bottom shelf. He even searched behind some of them. Maybe he would find one bear that wasn't new, the one-of-a-kind Swiss Hare Bear. But Sayre's all-natural cubs were brand new, all-of-a-kind bears. "Well, don't you 3 bears want a few of my all-natural cubs to bring home?" Miss Sayre asked the Alden bears. Benny couldn't stop himself from speaking up. "We like Peggy bears," he said, so loudly his voice rose even louder than Chatter Bear's. Miss Sayre moved away. "Then I guess you're not interested in anything new and exciting." She turned to a child who had arrived with her mother. "Perhaps you are, young lady. Meet one of my new, all-natural cubs," Miss Sayre told the child. "Would you like to hold it?" "The stuffing is coming out," the little girl said. "It's too skinny." Miss Sayre bustled around the booth. "Not to worry. I've had so much, interest in my bears, I had to order more before they were quite done. Let me show you what I can do." Miss Sayre unlocked a small storage cabinet. She pulled out the orange tote bag that was never far from her. See all this fleece? She grabbed a fistful from her bag. This is the finest lamb's wool around. That's what goes into my bears. Henry overheard this. He stepped between Miss Sayre and the child. Fleece like this goes into Peggy bears, too. Where did you get it? For once, Miss Sayre couldn't speak. From a farm, she finally answered, more slowly than usual. Oh, do you own a sheep farm? The mother of the child asked. With your own lambs? Miss Sayre took the rest of fleece from her bag. It began to expand into a big puff as she tried to come up with a truthful answer to the woman's question. No, actually, I don't have my own sheep farm. But I do. The three bears, along with Henry and the other visitors, turned around. Peggy Furman stood in Miss Sayre's booth, looking over the rows of copycat bears on the shelves. Miss Sayre put her hand down on the fleece puff and tried to hide it. Of course, it was much too big to hide. Jessie was too quick for Miss Sayre. I need some stuffing, too, she said to the people in the booth. She patted her furry belly. I didn't eat enough porridge. Peggy broke into a smile. Thank you, Papa Bear. My fleece somehow walked out of my barn without being on one of my sheep. I don't know how it happened, but I'm glad you helped me find it. Miss Sayre went over to Chatterbear. She pushed a button. Finally, the booth quieted down. I'm sorry, Peggy. When Doc couldn't get Chatterbear working, I decided he was right. Children want bears to cuddle, not to talk. So I decided to finish some bears I'd started last year and use some natural wool to stuff them. I didn't call them hazel bears, though. That's because you couldn't, Peggy said. Putting your own name on these bears would have been wrong. You used some of my designs and now my wool fleece. The customers began to drift away. Henry and the three bears stayed with Peggy. The day Peggy taught us how to sort fleece, were you up in the loft? Henry asked. Miss Sayre stared at Peggy. Yes. You never let me help out with shearing the fleece or clearing it. I wanted to learn how it was done in case my bear business became successful and I could buy a nice farm like Woolly Farm. Peggy sighed. Miss Sayre, Doc and I have offered you a great deal of help over the years. We even let you into the studio and the toy hospital to borrow things, but I couldn't give away all our secrets. Miss Sayre held one of her bears so tightly, some of the stuffing squeezed out. I know, Peggy. I'm sorry. I get ideas, but then I don't stick with them very long. I like bears, but I can't figure out how to make children like my bears. Peggy seemed a little less upset. Well, that's the real secret, isn't it? Why don't you ask these three bears? Miss Sayre looked at the Aldens in their bear outfits. She still had no idea who they were. Well, what's the secret about bears? Benny spoke up first. They have to be fat, not skinny, and soft. They shouldn't talk too much, Violet said. Or be too big, because then you can't hold them, Jessie added. What about old bears? Miss Sayre asked, forgetting everything the children had just told her. I couldn't find old bears, fix them up, and sell them for a lot of money. Oh, I could find old bears, fix them up, and sell them for a lot of money. Yes, that's an idea I never thought of. Henry looked at Miss Sayre. Are you sure you never thought of it? Chapter 10, A Surprise Prize. The jamboree was so crowded and the Aldens were so busy being bears, the last day arrived much too quickly. I finally finished sewing up Mr. B for the Best Bears contest, Violet said when the children met outside the town hall. Benny was worried about something. How can we eat at the teddy bear's picnic with our costumes on? The bear mouths are too small. Henry laughed. Not small enough for you to stop talking, Benny. I guess the three of you can take turns being people again. Peggy said it's okay to be half bears and half people at the picnic with our bear heads off, Jessie said. She told me people like finding out who the three bears really are. I'd like to find out who our suspects really are, Jessie said. I decided Miss Sayre isn't one of them. The other children couldn't see Violet's thoughtful face under her costume. I wish we could find out if Mrs. Keppel is really Elsa Byrne. If she took Herr Bear, maybe she had a good reason. Henry noticed Professor Tweedy walking quickly in the Aldens' direction. What about him? Henry asked. We still don't know why he's been acting so strangely. For someone who reads bear books, he doesn't even seem to notice you're the three bears, Henry said when the professor passed by. I'm going to introduce myself, Jessie decided. Maybe we'll get some clues from what he says. Jessie stepped in front of the professor. Hello, I'm Papa Bear from Goldilocks and the Three Bears. This seemed to be a huge surprise to the professor. Well, whoever put you in that costume should read a few different editions of the story. In the old books, the three bears do not grin like cartoon bears as you do in those costumes. The professor walked away, leaving the Aldens to wonder about him. Violet lifted her arm to check her watch, but of course it was hidden beneath her costume. Henry, isn't it almost time to show Mr. B to the judges? They're going into the hall. That's where Professor Tweedy went too. Henry checked his watch. Time to go, with or without the Herr Bear. I guess all we can do now is keep an eye out for Mrs. Keppel and Professor Tweedy too. Now Mr. B can keep two eyes out, Benny reminded everyone. Streams of teddy bear lovers made their way into the Old Mills Town Hall. They brought their beloved bears in wagons, baskets, baby carriers, and strollers. There were bears of all shapes, sizes, and colors. Psst! There's Mrs. Keppel in front of the ladies' room, Jessie whispered to Violet. She's got a baby carriage. Let's follow her. See you two later, she told Henry and Benny. Mrs. Keppel gave Violet and Jessie a big smile when she saw them in their bear suits. Ah, two of the three bears, she said to the girls, whom she didn't recognize. Where is Baby Bear? Jessie nodded in Benny's direction. He was standing near the judges' table with Henry and Mr. B. He's over there. Mrs. Keppel tried to push her carriage into the ladies' room when the security guard came by. Sorry, no carriages in there, Mrs. Keppel. Don't worry, it's safe out here. I'll be just down the hall. After the guard moved away, Jessie had an idea. Would you like us to watch your carriage? After all, we're bear parents too. Mrs. Keppel laughed but hesitated. Yes. I shall be back within minutes. Within seconds, Jessie tugged at the baby blanket covering the carriage. Two bears! She and Violet cried at the same time when they saw two nearly identical bears staring back, one with blue eyes and one with golden eyes. Violet quickly covered the bears again. You were right, Jessie, she said. Mrs. Keppel did take Herr Bear. I saw his eyes. Mrs. Keppel returned. Danke. Thank you, she said. She pushed her carriage forward and walked off. When the girls found Henry and Benny again, they had to wait to tell them their news. Grandfather was back and talking to Peggy, Doc, and Herr Bear's owner, Mrs. Withers. Even Miss Sayre was there, standing next to Mr. Alden. As always, she was holding Chatterbear. Jessie's news would have to wait. Hi, Grandfather, Jessie whispered. It's me under this costume, and Violet's in that costume. They took off the heads of their costumes so Grandfather could see their faces. Grandfather hugged his plump, furry grandbears. You've been eating too many berries, he said, chuckling until he saw some long faces. Oh my, I'm afraid my joke won't cheer up this group. Doc already told me a valuable bear he was fixing for Miss Withers here was stolen from the toy hospital. Have you had any luck solving this mystery? Follow me, Jessie said, waving everyone toward the front of the hall. Something's up, Violet whispered to the boys. When the Aldens came to the judges' table, they were in for another surprise. Professor Tweedy, Henry said. What are you doing behind the judges' table? Unlike the smiling judges at the table, the professor looked as if he were about to examine machines, not sweet bears. As you may know, I am a history professor, he explained. I've been interested in historical bears since I wrote about President Theodore Roosevelt years ago." Benny smacked his furry forehead. "I know why. My kindergarten teacher said teddy bears were named after him because he wouldn't shoot a cub on a hunting trip. Neither would I." The Aldens thought they saw a smile cross Professor Tweety's face, but they couldn't be sure. "That's quite correct. Mr. Roosevelt was a very popular president, so some toy makers named their bears after him. Not that you'll see a genuine teddy bear here. They are extremely rare, as I wrote in one of my articles on bears." Doc stepped forward to shake the professor's hand. "Why didn't you tell me you were an expert? I would have given you the run of my collection of bear magazines and books." The professor looked over the top of his glasses at Doc. "Don't mention it. I helped myself to your library. Here," he said, opening his briefcase. "I borrowed these magazines. You can take them now. As for not telling anyone, I certainly didn't want all these people with their bears following and pestering me. I'm only here to judge the antique bears, those of historical interest." That's when Jessie made her move. "What about these? Are they of historical interest?" She slowly pulled away the baby blanket covering Mrs. Keppel's bears. "That's my bear!" Mrs. Withers cried. "That woman stole my bear!" Mrs. Keppel looked around at everyone. "I'm not ashamed at all that I took this bear. Look, Professor," she said, handing over 2 yellowed sheets of paper. "You will find my childhood name listing me as the parent of Fraulein Bear. My dear brother Kurt's name is on the Hare Bear birth certificate. The movers stole our bears when we had to leave our home in Switzerland. I have searched for my bear children for many years. 2 years ago I found Fraulein. This week I found her twin, Hare Bear. I would have offered to buy him, but I don't have the money. I wasn't going to keep Hare Bear. I just wanted to have the 2 of them together for a short while. Hare Bear is all I have left to remind me of my dear brother." Doc stepped forward. "I'm sad to say, Mrs. Keppel, that Mrs. Withers purchased the Hare Bear at an auction of rare toys years ago. I believe, after all this time, you cannot really claim Hare Bear as your own." Mrs. Withers looked shocked. "I had no idea that the bear was stolen," she said. "If I had known that there was someone who cared about it this much, I would have come looking for you a long time ago." "What are you saying, Mrs. Withers?" asked Henry. "I'm saying that this bear belongs with the person who loves it the most," said Mrs. Withers. "I have many more valuable bears in my collection, but it's clear to me that no bear would be more valuable to Mrs. Keppel than the Hare Bear. I'd like you to have it," she said, turning to Mrs. Keppel. "I only wish you had just told us all who you were to begin with." Mrs. Keppel looked like she couldn't believe what she had just heard. Then she threw her arms around Mrs. Withers, crying tears of joy. "Now that's a bear hug," Benny said, grinning. A few minutes later, the judges announced that it was time to judge the bears. They looked over table after table of bears and finally made their decision. Professor Tweedy put on his glasses, stood up, and tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, I ask that you hold your applause until we name all the winners. For friendliest bear, we award the prize to the Alden's Mr. B." Benny clapped by mistake, but luckily his bear paws didn't make any noise. Professor Tweedy went on. "For rarest bear, the prize will be shared by Mrs. Henley Withers Hare Bear and Mrs. Elsa Keppel's Fraulein Bear. Lastly, the judges have created a new prize for most talkative bear. This prize goes to 2 bears, Chatter Bear, owned by Miss Hazel Sayer, and Baby Bear, not owned, but worn by Master Benjamin Alden." Professor Tweedy couldn't keep people from clapping now. The winners came up to the table to have their pictures taken with their bears and their prizes, bear-shaped jars of honey. For once, Benny got a word in before Chatter Bear. "I'm glad we solved the mystery. I couldn't bear it much longer." The end. Thank you for listening, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this really fun bear story. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.